Welcome back to continue our discussion talking about heat and cold conditions. Joining me again is Maurice White Jr. He's a paramedic with the Creek Nation Emergency Services. Let's jump in.
Okay.
Now, at the end of the last, before break, we were talking about heat cramp in terms of what to do if a person is experiencing that. So you said cool yourself down, so get
Yes.
into a cool environment. If you have
Yes.
cool compresses, that would be helpful, etc. You don't need to really look at electrolyte replacement like with Gatorades or things because you probably still have enough within your body, but you do need water.
Yes.
Now, let me ask this question about the water. Does it matter what temperature? Because sometimes people think, well, I need some really, really cold water.
Yes.
But is that more shocking to the system or should it be a little more lukewarm? What about the water?
Well, really, cold water is absorbed quicker in the body.
Okay.
So, and at this point, yes, the colder the better. But to prevent this condition from progressing, any fluid intake is good, any water fluid intake.
Okay.
Generally, people think they need salt substitutes and salt
Right.
tablets, and that's one thing you do not want to do in any of these conditions because generally there's enough sodium in the body, and to give that extra salt simply causes more nausea and the possibility of vomiting because
Okay.
it irritates the stomach.
Okay.
So at this point, with the heat cramps, water replacement and cooling is what you need.
Okay, and like you mentioned, you might have some of the residual of the heat cramping a little bit later, up to
Yes.
18 hours later, but don't panic as long as you're taking in the water and you're keeping your body temperature cooler,
Yes.
that you're probably going to be okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why it's important to be aware of these things because the residual cramps later could interfere with your sleep and rest. And the body does its best repair work when you are resting and asleep. So if you are a person who has to work outside in high humidity, high heat situations, now you have compounded your possibilities of experiencing this again because the body is simply weakened by the lack of rest due to the cramps. So I make that point to emphasize that this is not something that you take in a little fluids and the problem
Right,
is solved.
right.
There are residual effects from that, even from the heat cramp end of the spectrum.
Okay, now you did mention too, of course, with the heat cramp that you can get the nausea and vomiting as well, that kind of thing. Tell us a little bit before we move to heat exhaustion, the next sort of higher level. How much water should we consume? Because you make a good point. Sometimes we think, oh, I'll drink 3 or 4 glasses of water. Oh, I'll be just fine. So how much should we really think about consuming, especially during this period and normally, especially with high heat, high humidity?
Sure. 6 to 8 glasses, 8-ounce glasses, should be the norm for everybody under any conditions. 6 to 8
Okay.
8-ounce glasses a day. If you're working or anticipate being in high heat, high humidity, exertional conditions, 2 to 4 8-ounce glasses per hour while you're experiencing those conditions should be your intake.
Wow.
And if you are at the point of having cramps or if you are at the point of feeling thirsty where you're really playing catch up because the body is really depleted and at a point of becoming dehydrated long before the thirst sensation kicks in. So 2 to 4 if you're out sporting activities or if you're gardening or whatever.
Or your job is outside.
Or your job, exactly. And 6 to 8 or more. 6 to 8 is normal, and maybe 8 to 10 8-ounce glasses per day if during these exceptionally hot
Okay,
times.
as a norm. Okay. Now let me ask one other question, then I
Sure.
promise heat exhaustion. What about people who struggle with water, such as me, and you want to put a little bit of lemon in it or something like that? Is that okay, or is that kind of defeating the purpose?
No, the lemon is fine. Anything that can increase the intake is fine, except the sugary drinks. And what they do is have a tendency to make you void
Actually, they
or
deplete
lose
you,
more.
right,
Exactly.
right,
So if you can stay away from the high sugar drinks and even coffee, coffee can be considered part of that water fluid intake. It's not the best, but you can count that as part of the fluid intake. But the absolute best is plain water.
Right.
And I've thought about some strategies. I think one of the things that maybe hold a lot of people back is the bottled water phenomenon. Because, you know, if people really think that that water is better, and they're out doing their business on a hot, humid day and they can't get to it. Well, now they're putting it off until a little bit longer until they can get home or get to the store to get that bottled water.
Okay.
And tap water is perfectly safe. And I've even advised people it's safe, it's cheaper, and a little thing I do is simply it's a lot easier to go into your local Quick Trip or your local convenience store, whatever that may be. 25 cents, you get a 32-ounce cup of water and a straw. And you would be amazed through the day, just sipping on that through the day, how many of those you can deplete.
And I use the bottled water to fill it up, so at least it helps me. I sort of use it as a count of how much I've taken
Yes,
in, but
good
I
point.
fill it up from other water.
Yes.
Now, let's get into heat exhaustion. What
Okay.
is heat exhaustion?
Okay. At the point that of heat cramps, the thermoregulatory system is still working. That's controlled by the hypothalamus. Now, when we progress to the point of heat exhaustion, we are generally reaching a point of becoming dehydrated. We have been sweating profusely. You will probably definitely have nausea and vomiting at this point, and the regulatory system is still working to some degree. But the major problem with heat exhaustion is that it's generally a precursor to heat stroke, which is a true emergency. But with heat exhaustion, the person may be somewhat confused. They can respond to you normally, but maybe a little bit confused.
Okay.
And as the name implies, extreme fatigue, sudden onset of extreme fatigue, along with profuse sweating. The skin may even feel a little bit cool because of the sweating and the evaporation caused by the air. And the best thing for that person is rapid cooling. Once again, take them out of the environment. And for this person, though, you want to prevent them from moving on to the next phase. So if you've got ice available, you would wrap that ice in either plastic or a towel and place it in those areas where the blood flows closest to the surface of the skin. That's behind the knees, the neck, groin area, wrist area. Now, and you want to be careful about placing ice against the bare skin, but that's one way. The next way is to simply loosen the person's clothing. If you've got a water hose, spray them with the water and fan. That convection action causes them to dissipate more of the heat.
Okay.
So those are some of the steps you want to take and monitor that person. And this person, depending upon pre-existing conditions, if there are any pre-existing medical conditions such as heart or kidney problems, they should still be seen by a physician. These people can generally recover on their own if they do have adequate fluid intake, if they are cooled down rapidly, and if they cease the activity that placed them in that position.
Okay. So far that's not, before I take another quick break,
Sure.
that's not the level where we need to call the ambulance quite yet.
No.
Unless
with
the person is struggling.
Exactly, and with this caveat, if you are aware that this person is elderly because their system works a little bit different, they can't compensate as well, young children, and if there are pre-existing medical conditions that could be exacerbated by this extra stress that's been placed on the body, they should seek medical attention.
Immediately.
Immediately, yes.
Okay, let's take a really quick break and come back and look at heat stroke.
Sure.
Okay. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.